On this episode of Still Loading, Halo Combat Evolved. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this new episode of the Still Loading podcast. I am your host, Josh Koval, and today on the show, I kind of teased it a little bit during the Xbox episode, but the way it actually kind of worked out was I dropped my history of RTS series because like I mentioned in that episode, it was just getting too overwhelming to keep up with. So I decided to swap out November's History of RTS episode with a Halo episode because it is the 20th anniversary of the release of the original Halo game, Halo Combat Evolved. And with me, like in the Xbox episode, is my good old buddy, Andrew from the Experience Point. Andrew, how are you doing tonight?
Master Chief. Oh, wait, actually, no, it's not. I need a weapon. I am doing
That's pretty good.
Because I am stoked to talk about some freaking Halo because if you watch the Xbox one or listen to the Xbox.
Either or, whether you watch it over on the Experience Port or listen to it on the podcast feed.
However you experience the Xbox episode, you'll hear me stifle every conversation about Halo because I was like, we kept being like, we're going to save it for the Halo episode. We're going to talk about Halo. We're going to talk about Halo. This is one of my very favorite games of all time. So I'm super excited to be talking about it with you.
Well, and I mentioned on that Xbox episode just a mere 2 episodes ago that we're going to have a whole bunch of people for this Halo episode. And wouldn't you know it, we couldn't get a single person who was free. To be fair, we were recording this a little last minute, but the reason we're recording it now is because there's only a couple weeks till this episode is due out. So I wanted to record it as soon as possible. But either way, we are here to talk about the original Halo, Halo Combat Evolved, developed by Bungie Game Studios, or just what is their official title? Published by Microsoft Game Studios, just Bungie. Developed by Bungie. It was released on November 15th, 2001 for the original Xbox. And it was the system seller. It was the hottest game on the console and arguably the hottest game of that year, I would say, at least out of all the consoles. Halo took the world by storm. In my life, it took the world by storm. So we're going to get into the history in a little bit, but before we do that, Andrew, let's start off with what our earliest memories of Halo were. We're going to get into memories in general, but let's just stick to the first / earliest memory of Halo that you have, and then I'll tell you mine.
So I forget if I told you about this on the Xbox episode, but
if you did, you can repeat it. It's fine.
Yeah. So my very first experience of Halo was I purchased an original, or I always want to say original. I think I did that in the Xbox episode too. An official Xbox magazine. And it was either that or Game Informer. I know it was a magazine of some kind. And I was just, combing through it for my cheat codes for whatever N64 games I was playing at the time or whatever. And I open up to this huge spread of this advertisement for Halo, and it's like it's a full magazine spread. So like both whole pages, it was like this dark. It was the level Halo, the second level of the game, but it was nighttime, and there was Master Chief on the side, and he's shooting at all these enemies, and there's all these they crammed every unit, every vehicle onto this ad, and I had never seen anything like it. And it was so colorful and so all the designs were iconic. Like his suit was super cool looking, and I was like, what is this? And it was graphics from the game. So I was like, this is amazing. And it just said Halo Combat Evolved, and I was like, okay. And it's only on Xbox, and I'm like, I guess I'm getting an Xbox because I was just blown away by the idea of it. And then there was a whole article of it and talking about this upcoming shooter from Bungie called Halo, and there was more screenshots and just talking about how it was going to revolutionize gaming, and there's a lot of buzz about it, and I was instantly hooked. So that's when I started saving up for an Xbox, was when I saw that
And I think that leads you didn't tell that part of the story in the Xbox episode, but I believe that leads into your story of the X on that you did tell on the Xbox episode about how you got Halo before you got an original Xbox, before you got the
I
Xbox,
did.
because you just needed, you were worried it was going to
Yeah, yeah.
sell out.
Sell out. I
Little did you know it
needed to
sold
have
over
it.
6.4 million units, so
Yeah.
it did sell. That's for damn sure.
Yep.
Uh, so for me, my earliest memory of Halo was I remember going to a family party. It was some type, I don't even remember what it was for. It was relatives that we barely saw, even though they lived just like 10, 15 minutes away. My family, there's no like drama or anything. It's just that my family ended up getting pretty big, so it got too much to like hold a huge event, because there would be like 50 people if that was the case. It was just way too much, so they split it up. And this was the side of the family that kind of went off and did their own thing. So we were related, but we didn't get to see each other all that often. And I remember this the one cousin of mine, second cousin, third cousin, I don't know, it was some type of cousin, and he was definitely in college at the time, because I remember he lived down in the basement of his parents' house, and or maybe it was just after college, and he had this small little, I vividly remember this. I'm amazed I remember this. It was a very tiny room. He basically slept on a futon as his bed that you could turn into a couch, I guess. And he
Nice.
had his like TV set up, and he had like it was like this bachelor's pad, as a younger kid, I'm like, this is fucking awesome. Like, who wouldn't want to live here?
So
Um,
you had an Xbox down there.
he had an Xbox down there, and they were playing Halo multiplayer, and I had never played a game like this before. I had
Mm.
never seen multiplayer like this before. And I did play, GoldenEye and stuff like that, but this, you had a tank. You had
Yeah.
tanks, you had these giant open field like battles. It was actually Blood Gulch was the first map that we were playing on. And I vividly remember
Classic.
like getting into a tank, driving the tank up to, like, I was like, maybe they won't see me if I hide this tank in the shadows. Just the ridiculousness of that sentence. But it worked. I got 5 kills. I would just snipe people with the giant tank shell, and they couldn't find where it was coming from, because we're all young and didn't quite understand how to play well just yet.
Yeah.
And it took them a long time to find me, and I was hooked. I wanted Halo so bad. Ever since then, I was just so blown away by it. And that was my first experience with it, at a family party, at in this bachelor pad ass like area, a pad ass. I just realized that it kind of sounds, that's kind of funny. Anyway, it was in this bachelor pad, and he had all this cool shit, and we played it, and it was great. And that was my earliest memory of it, and it stuck with me, man. It really,
Mhm.
really stuck with me. And as much as I don't keep up with the series now, I do think the series for a long while was the only popular FPS game that didn't end up falling into the whole military, let's have four different shades of like it was like the 50 shades of gray shooters, but it's brown, 50 shades of brown.
Right.
Um,
That's, I mean, when you get into like
That was in
Reach
like the
was,
360 and PS3 gen and like early
yeah,
PS4, but like it was still like the only popular series that didn't put itself into that genre. So I know that's not Halo Combat Evolved, but looking back on it now, kind of means a lot that they kept that colorful aesthetic all these years later. Even though they still kept it realistic looking, it still was like bright and vivid, and it wasn't necessarily like, let's see all these different shades of gray and brown.
brown, yeah. They like, I mean, I think artistically they kind of lost that a little bit in 4 and 5, but it really seems like they're bringing it back for Infinite, which comes out next month, which I'm super stoked for. It seems like almost everything that they're doing, while keeping their own, 343 spin on it, they are harkening back to what made Halo 1 super special, which we're, obviously going to continue talking about, but like that feeling of wonder and like the sandbox of it all, and just the experience, and that famous Bungie 30-second loop of gameplay where it's like I think they said that's what they tried to build the game around, was like a 30-second loop of you build up and it's like waves. Like you build up and then it calms down, and you build up and comes down. It's not just like Call of Duty like at 11 the entire game, which I've always loved about Halo is the pacing and the atmosphere.
I was actually trying to look up the 30-second thing. I remember learning about that, but I don't remember where anymore.
Yeah, it's probably in one of the old like the Vidocs that they would make from Halo, which I'm so glad that they did, because you can still go back and look at like these like late 90s, early 2000s like videos of them making Halo, and they all look so tired. Like I'm sure we'll talk about the
Game
crunch of the
development
development
is
of this
a
game, but like
I mean, I
oh
don't know much about like the struggles that they went through in terms of development. I do know Bungie at the time was going through a lot of financial hardships when Halo was
yeah.
being developed. So let's dive into the history then a little bit.
Okay, this
Um,
is crazy because like I think probably for the first time, like I think I know more about the like the development and the history than you do,
then
because normally like, and we said this last time, but like you have a lot more of like the facts at the ready and the history and more analytical, and I'm like more of the emotional left no right brained side of
whatever
it.
brained of it is.
Yeah.
Well, so a lot of people don't know because Bungie became well known, broadly well known in the mainstream for Halo. But before Halo came out, they actually had 9 other games released.
Hmm.
Their claim to fame prior to Halo was the Marathon series, which by all accounts is actually a really good FPS series that was Mac exclusive, and then an
Yeah.
RTS series that was an RTS series called Myth.
Yeah.
And there was, I believe, four. There was 9 games. I don't know which all were which. I know there was a lot of Marathon and like 2 or 3 Myth games, but they were there was 9 games prior. Marathon is the predecessor to Halo. There's a lot of similarities from my understanding. I've never played Marathon. Have you ever played Marathon?
I briefly played it when I had a Mac laptop. I was like, I gotta see, like once I was looking into the origins of Halo and how much of Marathon that they put into Halo, like reference wise and symbols and a little bit of lore. I was like, maybe I should play it. And it was kind of like going back in a time machine, and it was just like, oh, this is just like an awkward, Quake clone, because at the time everything was trying to be Quake. So I didn't really get into it, but I was like, I can see where it went from this to Halo, which was kind of cool. It's interesting that I was gonna say when you're like, oh, I stopped doing my RTS videos to talk about Halo, and I'm like, well, Bungie stopped making an RTS game and
Yeah,
instead
to
made it
make an
an
FPS.
FPS.
Yeah, it's a very it kind of fits in because Halo was originally supposed to be an RTS for
Yeah,
using the Myth engine, because Myth was like a medieval fantasy type of game, as far as I understand, at least. It was
yeah,
a medieval RTS, and they were going to make uh, Halo into an RTS. It was a sci-fi RTS, and they kind of converted it to a third-person shooter, then eventually to a first-person shooter. And they
yeah,
did obviously go back to their RTS roots with the Halo Wars games, which honestly, in all honesty, is surprising how, from my understanding, how good they are for a console RTS game, which is very difficult to pull off, from my
yeah.
understanding.
It's a console RTS game, and it's an RTS game at all that I liked, so you know that it's good. I mean,
I
for
forgot you
all
don't like
argument's sake, I only
RTSs.
liked it because it's Halo, but it's basically like another StarCraft, because again, you have the three factions that are basically the same. Terrans, humans, the what the heck are the aliens
Covenant,
called
the humans. You
in
have the Covenant,
StarCraft?
and then you have the Brutes. I don't know if the Brutes are part of the Covenant, but
No,
the
no, oh,
Flood.
Protoss. I'm no thinking
Oh,
of
you're
of
thinking of
StarCraft.
StarCraft. Yes,
So
yeah, Protoss, Zerg, and Terran.
it's Protoss, Zerg, and Terran, and then in Halo Wars you have the Covenant, the Flood, and humans. So or UNSC. But yeah, they
Wait, could
started
you
making
actually
it.
control the Flood in that? Like, could you play as the Flood in
I
Halo
don't know if
Wars?
you could. Maybe you could in multiplayer, but you come across them in the campaign, which is cool. Um, which is a little tease for another reason why Halo CE was so good, was that twist, like with the Flood.
Mhm.
But they started to make this like sci-fi RTS game, and they kept like through development, like they kept bringing the camera closer and closer and closer, because they're like, this is so cool and fun, we want to like experience it up close. And I think like I remember hearing like the turning point was as soon as, because they were like, everybody does the whole, you click on the units and you click where they want them to go, but they were like, what if you could just control them, and you can zoom the camera in and control the little guys running around. And so they made this Master Chief's name before he had the name was just called Future Soldier. So you had this Future Soldier guy with this super ugly looking armor, which actually, funny enough, they just put into Halo, the Master Chief Collection. You can
Oh,
get the
really?
armor for the Halo multiplayer now. You can they made the original Future Soldier from that early demo of Halo 1.
Oh,
You
that's
can put it on your
awesome.
guy in Master Chief Collection, which is kind of funny. But they like were like, okay, so here's Future Soldier, and you're gonna drive the Jeep now. And they gave the Warthog, early Warthog at the time, the like
The
physics
Puma,
of
if
like,
you watch Red vs. Blue.
yeah, the Puma, well, like a Puma. And as soon as they were like, yep, you can get on the Warthog, you can drive around these hills, they were like, all right, we need to just make this a third person shooter game. And then the camera just kept getting closer and closer, and it became a first person shooter.
And I mean, the vehicle sections are in third person, which is interesting
Yeah.
because a lot of FPSs would just have you still drive in first person. I'm glad they stuck with third person for the
Oh,
driving
me
segments.
too.
I think it works really well.
Yeah,
Uh,
the iconic vehicle design makes it so that it would have been a huge waste if you couldn't see the like just the shapes of like the banshees and the ghosts, like the bubble thing
all
with.
the vehicles are so like the design of this game is so well. I'm not even talking about
Oh
just
my
the
god.
game design, but the art direction of this game is just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like
It's still my favorite of the whole franchise.
I mean, it really, if you, I feel like for a game to really be truly transcendent, a lot of stuff has to go right. And
Mm,
this game, and we're going to get to all of it, of course. It has to have obviously good game design. It has to have a good story. It has to have good music, and it has to have good art direction. And this literally kills it on all fronts.
yeah,
Like
100%.
I like people know the Halo song, even if you've never played Halo. Probably,
Yeah.
people know what Master Chief is and what he looks like because the design is so strong. Like you can picture him in your head. Like
Mhm.
it's just outstanding. So some more backstory. The game was originally revealed in a MacWorld conference, and it was actually announced by Steve Jobs. He brought
Yep.
on the devs, which was huge because Steve Jobs for a long while hated video games. He
Yeah.
would he didn't give two shits about gaming on the Mac, which is probably why for a long while gaming on the Mac has been so rough. But
Yeah.
which is funny because he actually worked at Atari before he
Yeah,
ended up
yeah.
founding Mac. Um, and then they were going to base it all. It was a sci-fi version, a sci-fi RTS using the Myth engine, like we've mentioned before. And 3 months after the original Xbox was announced is when Microsoft actually bought up Bungie. That's when they bought
Mhm.
out Bungie, and Bungie needed help because I was reading this and I didn't know why they were in financial straits or why they were struggling, and apparently with Myth when they were designing or Myth 2 specifically, there was an issue with Myth 2 that caused basically the um it what was it there was a glitch that caused Myth 2 to wipe the contents of the directory it was installed directory it
What?
was installed to, and it was only discovered after 200,000 copies had already been produced for the December 98 launch. Bungie recalled all the copies,
No.
issued a fix, costing the company $800,000. And as a result, this is read directly from Wikipedia, this part. As a result, Bungie sold a share of the company and publishing rights to Take Two Interactive. Take Two
Mm,
Interactive, I'm pretty sure the people who owns Rockstar, um, I'm 99% certain. Yeah, Grand Theft Auto, Mafia, they actually have the Civ series as well, Red Dead,
mhm,
NBA 2K, Max Payne, BioShock, so they own a lot of really popular IPs. But they sold a share of it to Take Two, which I believe Take Two still owns the rights to. They own the rights to Myth, maybe also to Marathon.
mm.
I'm not certain. Oh, and the Macworld thing was in 1999. I didn't have the date
It's
written
99,
down, but I
yeah.
just found that it was 99. Um, and when Microsoft was courting Bungie, they couldn't quite sell them on the idea of buying them out entirely,
Mhm,
because understandably Bungie was independent, so they wanted to keep that independence. So Microsoft had to do a lot of courting to them, be like, no, you're going to keep your independence. We're not going to, force you to do this and this. And they did a lot to court Bungie. Like they really wanted them so much so that to prove that they would stay independent, they actually had to they when they built their office, they had it so like you needed a pass to get from the Microsoft side to the Bungie side, even
Mm,
though it was owned all by Microsoft. Like
yeah.
most Microsoft employees couldn't get into the Bungie side without some type of an appointment or a pass. Like it very much felt like a different building.
Yeah. They knew they were revolutionizing video games because everything that they did was pretty much unprecedented for the time. So they were keeping it very much under wraps and very secretive because, I mean, there's a reason that when Halo came out, every shooter that came out after that tried to just be Halo, and everyone was like, oh, Halo killer this, Killzone this, Resistance, whatever. But they
Nothing
knew they
ever.
had something special from the beginning.
As with most things, time just kills a series more than any one other thing.
Yeah.
But with this though, what I think was the craziest thing, they bought them a bullpen style office so that way there wouldn't be like cubicle like these like individual offices and everyone feels so isolated. They build it like a bullpen so it's a lot easier for people to interact with each other. And this is the craziest thing that Microsoft did for them, in my opinion. They built their office, a bullpen style office, complete with a living room simulator. So that way the team could play their game and test their game and simulate what it would be like for the user experience on the other end.
Oh, that makes sense because there's a ton of video footage of like them playing the game, like early access versions of the game in like this living room setting. And I wonder if that was just The Office.
Yeah, it could have been because they had a whole quote unquote living room simulator.
That's
And
amazing.
the reason why Microsoft even bought up Bungie, which it's just kind of funny to think about, like Marathon was a Mac exclusive and it was this really popular FPS for the Mac. And then
Hmm.
Halo was going to be a Mac exclusive until Microsoft bought them out. And one of the reasons they were looking for another IP, other than obviously they were launching the Xbox, was at the time they only really had two IPs that they owned: Age of Empires and Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Yeah.
And kind of understandably, they didn't think either of them would really work on a home console experience. Like RTSs are very tough on home consoles, and flight simulators, I really feel like, are for the hardcore people on PC.
Hmm.
So it kind of makes sense why they weren't really like jumping through hoops trying to get those to work on the console. They really just wanted to find a new IP. And so, here comes Bungie with Halo.
Here comes
And
the IP.
yeah, the IP. So obviously they developed the game for it. It comes out. It's a huge hit. There is, I mean, this game, I can't, and we're going to get into some of the more like specifics of the game itself. But like you were saying, Andrew, like this game really defined FPSs. As
Hmm.
much as people like to credit GoldenEye with, modern or like putting FPSs on a console and making it viable, because at that point it really wasn't.
Yeah.
GoldenEye really showed that, oh, you can have like an FPS on on a home console. Halo was really what perfected it. Halo, like the control scheme in Halo is essentially, I mean, there's probably another game that uses control scheme prior, but
Hmm.
no game had brought it to the public's or other developers' attention as effectively as Halo did.
Right.
And Halo, like this control scheme is literally almost what every game uses now. Like
Yeah.
a third person action game, an FPS game, a third person platforming game, like almost every control scheme uses the Halo control scheme, at least in
Yeah.
terms
And
of
that's
your
because
joysticks.
of this guy here. For audio listeners, I'm holding up the Duke controller. When they were porting it onto the Xbox, they were like, because shooters before this, every weapon, you had the number keys and stuff. Like I'm thinking of Half-Life and stuff where you can just hold 100 weapons at a time, or you get the wheel and it's everything. And but they were like, we have much fewer buttons to work with this time. So now for the first time, it's like, okay, dedicated, first of all, second thumbstick to aim, which was unprecedented. You have a dedicated grenade button. You have a dedicated melee button. Like you didn't have that before. Like Half-Life, you click into the crowbar and then that's what you use. And then you switch to the grenade launcher or switch to a hand thrown grenade and then throw it. Now you pull the trigger to shoot, you pull the other trigger to throw a grenade, you push the bright red B button to punch a guy in the face. and it's just streamlined that whole experience onto
Mhm.
console. And now, like you said, every game uses that now, pretty much to this day.
It's just I don't think it can be understated how important that control scheme is. Like, it really
Mhm.
we a friend of ours, JR, that we were trying to get him on the show, but due to scheduling conflicts, we couldn't get him. He might come on for Halo 2 if we can get him though. Whenever that comes to fruition. But I even remember back in college where we met him, uh that he was talking about that, like, it
Mhm.
revolutionized the home shooter for everything. Like, it and that was, I mean, that's, I don't want to date ourselves, but it's been a while since we were in college. So
We're old. I mean, it's
yeah,
been 20 years since this game came out. I was like
yeah,
12, 13.
2001, I would have been 12. Yeah, I
Yeah,
would
we're the
have
same age,
been.
so 12,
Wait,
yeah.
no, hold on. Yeah, no, 12. I did the math right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have been 12. Um, it's nuts, man. Like, this game is so freaking important, and not just because it it's a good game, but because it really like, one, it single-handedly made Microsoft a viable, like, it made Xbox a viable platform. It's single
Yeah.
like, the way Master Chief and Halo is as important to Microsoft as Mario is to Nintendo. Like,
Yeah,
like, I'm
100%.
not saying Mario is obviously more important than Halo and Master Chief because it kind of revitalized the game industry by and large, but
Also came
Halo
out
and
like 20 years before Halo did.
almost, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I think 85 in the US. I don't know when in Japan, but it Halo made Microsoft a viable platform, made Xbox a viable platform for Microsoft, and made the Xbox at least somewhat profitable for Microsoft. And
Yeah.
enough so that we actually got to see an Xbox 360 and then the rest of the shitty naming schemes that they decided to go with these consoles. But
Uh,
and it's just incredible. So onto the game itself. I mean, I don't. Are there any other bits of history? Because let me see if I missed anything on my notes. I have a lot just talking about the games itself, like interesting things within the game itself.
mhm.
Oh, Microsoft is actually responsible for the name from Halo to Halo Combat Evolved. Bungie just wanted to call it Halo.
Yeah.
Microsoft changed it to Combat Evolved to help it stand out between, like, from the glut of first person shooters at the time from the
Right.
other military shooters. And it's weird, as much as I think Halo Combat Evolved is too clunky of a name, like just Halo would have been perfect. I think at the time, I think that was a smart choice.
It was. It was a marketing choice. Having a name that's a single word that doesn't have anything to do with what the game actually is. Like, I mean, to the story of the game, yeah, but if you just were to call a game Halo with no context, and that's something that they ran into, they're like, nobody's gonna know what this is even about. So
Like, what's it
they
supposed to
throw
be?
on a
Yeah.
subtitle, Combat Evolved, so it's easier to search for, and it's a whole marketing thing. But everyone knows it just as Halo, or Halo 1. Nobody says like, "Oh yeah, the first Halo Combat Evolved," you know, uh but
If
the
anything, they abbreviate it like you do, Halo CE,
Halo CE, yeah.
which also gets confused for the remake.
The what, custom edition?
The custom or isn't
That was the
the
one of the PC ones.
what about no, I'm talking about, like, the 360 remake where it
That
was
was
like
Halo Anniversary.
it was just Halo Anniversary. Okay,
Yeah.
never mind. But yeah, custom, yeah. Sorry, CE though, but go on.
Yeah, they were what were they gonna call it? They were gonna call it something else before somebody, um, wanted to call it Halo because of the, like, religious significance to the Covenant about the ring and Halo, and they actually
Mhm.
a lot of the Bungie guys thought it was like a little bit on the nose, but then it just ended up sticking. So they went with it, which was cool. I love that name because of the, like, religious undertones of the story, which is what makes part of the story so good. And honestly, like, when you're saying, like, the games, good games have to have, a good art style and story and whatever, like, the Halo actually, like, is a story focused more so around the, like, setting. Like, sure, there's Master Chief and Cortana and Captain Keys and all the
Oh,
other,
100, yeah, you're right. I agree with that 100%.
but the setting itself is the story, like this ring world and its significance, and the aliens are trying to, the whole great journey thing and all of this,
Who
whatever.
were the forerunners and why did they build the Halos, and
Yeah.
what the Covenant is, a collection of aliens all bound under this religious fanaticism of finding these Halos, and well, the reality of it is that the Halos were built to eradicate the Flood, but which we haven't got into in terms of the story yet.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the Flood, but the Flood are also, or sorry, but it also ended up killing the Forerunners or something.
Mm.
Maybe you know more. You actually not maybe you definitely know more of the lore than I do.
Yeah, I've read
I I
nearly
don't
all of the books.
I don't know. I'm sure there's a lore of how like where the Flood came from and how they came to be.
I
And I'm
could
sure.
take an hour specifically telling you exactly how they came to be, but you don't necessarily need to know that. And much like in Halo, or sorry, much like in when first Star Wars came out, Episode 4, there's all this backstory that you don't know, and it just makes the world feel that much richer. I'm glad it didn't start from the very beginning, and they don't spoon feed you the story, and they don't like hold your hand and say like, okay, now here's exactly what happens. Like, it makes the world feel lived in and real, and like there's stuff that you just don't know about, and it adds to the mystery. And that's why I loved this game, because there was stuff that you don't know. Like, the aliens all looked so alien, and the like there's a distinct look to all the weapons, and like, I mean, I could talk about the aesthetics forever, but to go back quickly to the last little tidbit I have about the history was Marty O'Donnell, who did the music and the sound design and stuff,
God,
and
I
who
love that song.
basically just like uh, video games like savior of the world. uh he came up with that, like that the chant, in like 3 seconds in the car, because
Wow.
yeah, because when, I mean, we can talk about like the crunch of like how they had
The
to
most
make the
iconic
game.
one of the most iconic songs of all time, and he came up with it in his car in like 3 minutes. That's
Yeah,
nuts.
he was like, well, they everything was under such a crunch, because when Microsoft bought them out, they're like, well, we need this by, holiday, this year. I think at the time, they only had like months to finish it, and so everything was like crunch, 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 and that ended up influencing a lot of like the level design and stuff, which we'll also talk about. But yeah, I remember there's a video where he's talking about it, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, I don't know if he was on the phone with somebody, but he was like, yeah, and then we can have like the strings come in and da, da, da. And then like I'm thinking like something haunting and mysterious, like a choir, or like a like monks chanting or something, and they're just going like, oh, like, and he starts to sing it, and then whoever he was talking to was just like, that's amazing, can we use that? And he transcribed it into the what we know it as today, which is
Wow.
amazing that it kind of just came up on a whim, which just shows like his genius.
I did see I did see I did find, sorry, two more little notes on the history real quick before we dive into the game and the story in earnest. They originally planned to have a weather system and indigenous life forms to flesh out the world. It basically seemed like Halo was going to be an open world game at one point in time, but
Mm-hmm.
it ended up getting just too, understandably so, a little bit too much for the dev team to take, especially under the time crunch. There was going to be 25 missions originally, and
Jeez.
it got cut down to 10, most likely because of the crunch that you mentioned.
Yeah.
And the multiplayer didn't work until 5 weeks before launch.
Yep. That was very much thrown in last second.
That
Um,
is wild to me.
yeah.
That's just nuts to me to think that
Yeah.
5 weeks.
Because
That's kind of like what it's so weird how some of the most iconic multiplayer things almost seem like an afterthought at times. Because in GoldenEye, I remember learning that the multiplayer in GoldenEye was literally done as an afterthought, like just
yeah.
couple weeks before it was supposed to launch, and even the higher ups at like Nintendo or whatever didn't even know they were putting it in there or something like that. Like it was a love project by the devs, and it just kind of worked out. And
Yeah.
it's
And they
nuts
added
that
in they added in all the previous bonds and all the characters and likenesses from the movies, only to find out like, hey, we don't have the license for that, so you got to take all that stuff out.
Yep, yep. So it's just nuts to me to think that these iconic shooters, the multiplayer, which is arguably what people remember the most about them.
Mm-hmm.
But Halo, you could argue the story is pretty is well, it's not a pretty, it's very iconic, but um no one remembers GoldenEye for its story. They remember it for its multiplayer.
Right.
People
Yeah.
remember Halo for both, like, for both the
Exactly.
story and multiplayer. But
Yeah.
it's just funny to me that these two iconic multiplayer games were afterthoughts. The multiplayer was an afterthought, basic,
Yeah.
or it was like a last minute thing they got it to work. It's nuts.
And most games of that era, did that very same thing and just tack on a multiplayer because of Halo, and it sucks. So like,
Mhm.
it was a lightning in a bottle thing that it was actually fun, and they managed to put in a ton of like different modes and stuff, and like the capture the flag, and like I think Juggernaut was part of Halo 1.
I don't
Um
remember if it was or not. It might have been.
yeah, but like capture the or King of the Hill, Oddball, even like all these fun little modes on what was basically just like, yeah, let's throw this into and see if anybody anybody likes it.
Moving on to the story now. So I'm going to kind of do a basic overview of the story of the first game, but then we're going to kind of go into some more specifics. But the basic overview of the first game, just so people can get an idea, and we're not just going into nitty gritty after nitty gritty detail, is
I will try to
you
contain myself.
you start out on this ship called the Pillar of Autumn, which Master Chief, who's your main character, he's a Spartan. We'll get into all the lore, but you're a super soldier. That's all you got to
Don't you
know.
mean future soldier?
Future soldier. And it crashes on, basically, they come out of hyperspace and they're being attacked by Covenant, I believe, right? And they get shot down onto the
Yes,
Halo.
but it's actually called slip space, not
Oh my
hyperspace.
god, dude. But anyway, so slip space, and they crash on Halo, which had previously been undiscovered, and Halo is literally just a ring. Like, it from the outside, it just looks like this metal ring, but on the inside, like on the inside band of the ring,
Mhm.
it's completely terraformed, and there's like creatures, and it looks like Earth. It looks like this completely natural world, and that's such a cool idea. Like, it's so sci-fi,
Yeah.
it's great. And they crash on it. The You find out that the Covenant, who is a group of races, of different alien races, all come together under this one religious banner called the Covenant. Crash land
Oh,
on this Earth, on this ring, and the humans are at war with the Covenant, and you don't really know why yet in this game. You obviously find out later through other stories. Sorry, what were you going to say?
that's what it was going to be called. It was going to be called Covenant. And
That's a
then
cool name too.
yeah, but then they renamed it Halo, but they still kept Covenant as the name of the alien race, which I thought was cool. Or not
That's
just alien
a
race, but the
But
alien.
the conglomeration of
Yeah.
those alien races. And you find out that the Covenant, this is like their holy artifact that they've been searching for years and decades, and they just finally found. And the humans are just like, we have no idea what this is. So through
Mhm.
investigation, you find out that Halo is a weapon, and on this ring is this race of aliens, different aliens separate from the Covenant, called the Flood, which are parasitic aliens that
Mhm.
infect their hosts and take over their body. And then and you find out, you don't find out in this game, but you find out later, there's a hive mind, and it kind of controls all of the Flood. And the Covenant wants, obviously you have the war between humans and Covenant, but the Covenant wants to save this ring, and humans just want to destroy it. They want to they don't want them to, because one, they don't want the Covenant to use the ring, because it will not only kill them and the Covenant, but it'll kill all life in this galaxy, as well as the Flood. So the humans decide they need to stop the Covenant from using the ring, and also they need to blow up the ring so the Flood can't get off and then infect other homeworlds. And essentially, they succeed, and that's a really boiled down version of the plot of this game. Like, there's a lot of stuff that happens. Am I missing anything from that really boiled down version, Andrew?
I will try really hard not to like correct things that you may have said incorrectly, but it's all very nitpicky. But that's basically the entire game in the nutshell. Yeah.
Now, with that nitpicky stuff, what did I get wrong, just for the listeners?
So the Halo rings, which you don't find out.
You don't know there's more of in the first game.
Yeah, I don't think you find out until the second one that there's more than one. But or maybe doing the first one, I'm not sure. They don't kill the Flood. They kill any organic material. So basically, it starves the Flood to death. So it
Oh,
doesn't kill the
okay.
Flood. Like Cortana says in the game, like, this doesn't kill the Flood. It kills their food, which is everything. So like any organic material, like, it just wipes out. So then they
That's
starve
even
to death
more
and die.
horrific.
Right? I know,
It's
it's
not even
so
like it's
metal.
not even like, oh, we're gonna sacrifice ourselves to take. It's like I mean, if you think about it though, by killing all their food, that's kind of a really torturous thing to do to the flood, like, and it like, as much as it'll kill you, you're gonna make these creatures starve to death as like the final
Yeah.
fuck you to them.
I mean,
I'm not saying it's great, but
when you see the horrors that they
oh,
inflict, I
the flood are terrifying.
yeah.
I think what's so magical about Halo 1 and obviously the series in general is that it combined this amazing sci-fi world and this all these amazing action set pieces, and then it
Mhm.
has this horror element. The flood is this
Which was a
horrific,
huge twist.
yeah, because you don't see it coming at all. And a lot of the game is, it kind of takes the mission structure of a military shooter where you have these very specific objectives, and the story kind of plays out through these objectives. But unlike other military shooters where I find it's hard to follow the story, I feel like Halo is really good at telling its story. It's very clear and concise what's
Yeah.
happening, at least in the first one. I think it gets a little bit more muddy as the series goes on. Like, I still have a hard time following what Halo 3 storyline is. I
Yeah.
Every time I try to play it, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck's happening right now. I'm going to this place for some reason, because in Halo 1 they would use a combination of cutscenes and in-game, like, Cortana, sorry, actually, your main character, Master Chief, he has an AI that he has in his suit of armor, not in his brain, but in his suit of armor that talks to him, and that
Mhm.
is Cortana. And
It is kind of in
so
his brain though.
it
It's
is
a
it is
neural
kind of in his
interface.
brain. I mean, when it's that close, when she's in your ear the whole time, she might as well be, right?
Oh yeah, she's
Uh
inside you the whole game. Well, most of the game.
but in Halo 1, you get a combination of, like, cutscenes in between missions, and then also Cortana speaking to you. From what I remember in Halo 3, a lot of the story is told through Cortana's exposition midway through the game. So while you're in the
Yeah.
middle of fighting shit, you're getting story exposition. I'm like, I can't do two things at once right now. I'm trying to survive, okay?
Yeah.
And even if you're not fighting anything, you're just walking through. It's I don't think it's as an effective method of storytelling, because it's a lot harder. Like, you're focused on getting to the next objective, and then you're also
Mhm.
having to pay attention while also keep a lookout for enemies, because you don't know what's up ahead.
Yeah.
So I personally did not like the storytelling as the series went on, but Halo 4 actually we're really loving.
That's the best thing about Halo 4 is the story.
The
Like,
story in Halo 4 is amazing.
yeah.
Um,
So
but Halo 1, I think, is tells a story really efficiently and really well, and it's a very clear and concise story, and it's just really well executed, in my opinion, at least.
yeah. So I'm gonna like go off for a second, but like what I think my favorite I was thinking about this earlier today and like how to concisely put why I think this game story wise and even from a mechanical standpoint is so special and so impactful is because it seems like they did everything with purpose and intent. Like there's a reason that they don't just drop you into this like big open world. It's not an open world game, but like this huge. There's a reason why the Pillar of Autumn level happens first, and then the level Halo. You don't even get onto the ring world until the second level. Most games of that era was just like drop you in. You're gonna see everything at once. It's gonna be like total sensory overload. They purposefully like the Pillar of Autumn level when you're on the ship. You know you get Cortana in the ship, and he's like captain's like get Cortana out of here. If they get hands on her, it's just if they're going to find out where Earth is. So you got a GTFO and we're going to crash on this ring that we found. You're
Hmm.
going through what effectively is a tutorial level. Like you're learning how to do things. You don't even
Jumping
have a
and
weapon.
crouching and shooting and looking around.
Well, you actually, yeah, but you don't even have a weapon for like the first bit of the game. You're on this,
You're right. You're right.
all these tight corridors. You're just running around. The aliens are coming in. You're getting glimpses of them, and they're killing people. And soldiers are like, "Follow me. We got to get to the bridge, whatever." And then when you finally get guns, it like opens up a little more. And then there's like the cafeteria part, and you're like, "Okay, shoot these aliens now." And then you progress, and it's tight corridors, and it's dark, and stuff's blowing up, and it's intense. And then you get to like a door that you have to bash in, and then it tells you that's how you do the melee. And then there's an elite like standing with his back to you, and you're like, okay, if I bash this guy in the back, then that's how it tells you, oh, you can do one hit kills on enemies if you punch him in the back of the head.
Hmm.
And then you get up and there's like then there's grenades, and then there's
They
it
just
just
keep
slow it
adding new
teaches you.
mechanics on
Yeah,
throughout the level, and it's not just thrown all at you all at once.
right. And then but it's very constricting, and you're in these tight hallways, these very human hallways. and you get on the escape ship and it, blows away, and then you see the main ship crashing in front of you onto the Halo, and then the lifeboat crashes and the next level opens up and you're still in this very tight corridor of the drop pod, and everyone's dead, and you come out, the sun is like shining through the trees, and you see the curvature of the Halo going up in the sky.
That opening visual is
Oh,
stunning.
yeah. I was blown away. Like 12-year-old me was jaw on the ground. Like, I've never seen anything like this. And everything feels so alien.
It's the most bizarre combination of feeling at home because you see you see trees and waterfalls and nature, but
Mhm.
then you just see space and this ring jutting up into it, and it's
Yeah.
just this very bizarrely juxtaposed emotions where it's like this is familiar but foreign all at the
Yeah.
same time.
And the weird foreigner structures, big angular, shooting these like beams into the sky, and you're like, what is that? And before you know it, Cortana's like, maybe we should get out of here, and the drop ships start coming down and the aliens are coming after you and you're running away, and then you come across groups of humans that are trying to like fight them off, and then you're like, we're all survivors trying to make it on this totally alien world, like while other aliens are coming to kill us that we barely even know about. And I love it so much. Like the
Do do you know, and speaking of Cortana, did you hear about the origins of where Cortana came from? Have you ever learned about that a little bit?
within the story.
Not the story, pre-Halo, like, where they kind of a little bit of the inspiration for Cortana. There's so, it's hard to explain, but so Cortana, the name at least, first appeared as an email address for emails sent to a popular marathon fan site, and the
Huh.
email was cortana@bungie.com, and this was allegedly a this is I got this from the Did You Know Gaming video on here. Allegedly, it was written by a Bungie employee named Nathan Bittner, and the emails, for the most part, they don't have any canonical tie-ins to the Halo story because this was obviously tied with Marathon. But Cortana is listed in the email address, so that's like her first quote unquote appearance, even though it
Oh,
wasn't
that's
really in
cool.
a game; it was in an email. But the emails, I mean, I'd have to look them up, but they seem really cryptic because in the trailer for Halo 3, I forget what the thing is, but there's a line at the end of the trailer for Halo 3 that's directly taken from one of the emails that Cortana, quote unquote, sent
This is how the
to
world ends.
This Is How the World Ends. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um that was taken directly from it. So from what they said on the video, none of the stuff in those Cortana emails are considered Halo canon except for when it appears in the Halo games.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, excuse me, because otherwise there's just there's no tie in. Like there's no way to tie them in. So I mean that's the fan accepted version of it,
Yeah.
but I found that super interesting. And if if the line is "This is the way the world ends," which I'm amazed you remember. Once again, you're a Halo fanatic, so I
It's
guess I'm
all
not
up there.
surprised. It's a good. I mean, it's a great. It's a that trailer. I totally see why it blew people away when
Oh
Halo
my
3
god.
was announced.
That
But
announced trailer and the one trailer that starts with it's implied to be Master Chief as a kid talking to another kid, and they're looking at the stars, and he's like,
mhm,
who do you think that anyone's up there? Do you think we'll ever meet them? And then it echoes again, and it's like, you think we'll ever meet them? And it's the Master Chief like holding the helmet, and he puts it on, and like stuff's blowing up around him.
I remember
That
that's a good trailer.
I have
That's a real.
chills just talking about it. Like that's maybe my favorite video game trailer of all time.
I really think Halo more than any other series in the it, the pop culture surrounding it outside of the game is just really well done. Even like that Forward Unto Dawn series that
Oh
came
my
out
god.
before Halo 4, that was a great I showed my wife that, and like I've said before, she's not a gamer and she really liked the show. It's a
Yeah,
really good
it was
show.
great. And Nightfall was great too. I don't know if you watched that one. That was one that they did before
I
5. It
did
kind of
not.
is an origin story of the one main character of 5. That was really good. The books, I mean, I love Halo, but like there's a reason that I read all the books too, or listen to them. I do the audiobooks.
I read The Fall of Reach, which
It's
I
great.
it's a good book. It's a
They're
really good
all like
story.
I've been burning through a lot of them to try to catch up because some of them are like leading into Infinite lately. So I'm like going hardcore listening to a lot of them, but like what they tie into, like there's still stuff that they're tying into like pre like Halo CE era like storylines, and like the lore has become so much like Star Wars. The universe has become so rich with all these stories that came from just this one little game that they didn't even think was going to be that big, and look at it now 20 years later.
There's a benefit to writing stories as very open and generic to start off, because it leaves you a lot of room for expanding upon it, and it lets people do creative things within the limitations that you've set for this world. Even though there may be broad limitations, there's still some limitations that they can then set. But yeah, man, this game is just, the story is just incredible, because after you land on Halo, I believe one of the first missions that you have to find, well, first you have to rescue, I don't know if we're going to go mission by mission, but I believe in that first, like mission 2, after you get off the Pillar of Autumn, you have to rescue a bunch of other Marines, a bunch of,
Mhm.
you have to travel around to different drop sites. And I remember when I was playing this game, one of the things that people were telling me is that the missions for Halo were really long, and they, for that time, those were long missions.
Yeah, that
they
in
they
particular
lasted,
too.
some of them lasted 20-30 minutes, probably longer. Some of them were
At
like 40
least.
minutes.
Yeah, because that one you have to go to the three distinct spots, which again just adds to the like the openness of like you're in those tight corridors in the first level, and then this one opens up onto this alien world, and basically go explore. There's no like now every game has the kill zone that you can't go through, and it's like return to the battlefield in 10 seconds, or you just mysteriously die. This game is just like if you want to jump off that cliff, go ahead, you're gonna die, but and it's just like
They
go, like
designed the
you want
world in such a clear way that when you go out of the bounds of where you're not supposed to go, they will kill you, but it's not some bullshit thing of like you're leaving the battle. It's like, oh, here's a cliff, or
to right.
here's water that you'll drown in, or
Yeah, yeah.
something like that. It's really well overall, like the layout of the level design is super
Mhm.
well done. And I'm always a fan of that. I always hate it when games like, it's like, it's what is it, like, especially like post-apocalyptic ones where it's like, oh, this is a radiation field over here. I'm like, oh, okay, so you just didn't program it and everything. Like, at least put a
There's just a
wall there.
convenient like
Yeah,
field that you can't go through. Yeah.
exactly, right? It's not. And it's interesting because Halo is such a linear game, but I've never played a linear game that feels so open.
Yeah.
It's not an open world game by any stretch. It's very, very linear, but for some reason they just designed it so well where it doesn't feel that way. You still feel like this is a world that you can explore and you can search around.
Yeah.
But
Because it
once
doesn't
you,
feel like a level of a video game. It feels like
mhm,
you're dropped onto this actual world.
it
Oh, hang
still
on.
kind of feels that way. Like, I go back and play it periodically, and that first level still feels like, it doesn't feel like a level. It feels just like this is the next thing I got to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you rescue all of those all the different squads of Marines, which you could do in any order, which is really cool because not a lot of games allow that type of freedom, I guess, or like
Mhm.
the type of variability. But once you do, you're supposed to then go rescue Commander Keys, I believe, right?
Captain Ease.
Captain Keys. Sorry, his daughter Miranda is Commander Keys. You meet her in the second game,
Yeah.
and Captain Keys, and you rescue him, but I believe it's not then, it's later on he does get killed by the flood, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember if it's, I don't think it's there. I think it's later on.
It's later. Yeah. He gets
That's
assimilated.
that's what I thought. So you rescue uh Captain Keys, and then you end up going to find, it's one of the coolest missions because it's also where you first meet the hunters, the silent cartographer, which, what a fucking
Yes.
great name for a mission.
Right.
Oh my gosh, it's just so evocative. It's
It's
so
also like
good.
maybe the most Halo Halo mission. Like I think of like what's a mission in Halo that's in all of the Halos that's just like you pick one level to show somebody Halo for the first time, and I would say probably either Halo the level or Silent Cartographer, because it opens up with you're coming down on the dropship and there's already a battle raging, and there's the aliens fighting the Marines. You rescue the Marines. There's driving sections, there's indoor sections, outdoor sections, there's the beach and the rocks and trees, and like there's the well, like you said, you see the hunters for the first time. So do we want to talk about like the different alien, I guess, units? Because like again, they all serve a purpose. Like I was saying before, with like everything seems so purposeful.
Well, real quick before we go into that, one fun fact about the Silent Cartographer was that it was actually the when the designers were developing the game, when they were testing out a lot of like the game mechanics and trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, they did it so on this sandbox level called B30, and
Mm.
B30 actually ended up becoming the Silent Cartographer, like that, like what they were doing on the
Oh,
B30
nice.
sandbox map for all their testing purposes ended up turning into the Silent Cartographer. So that's kind of cool. Like
I
the
can see that.
all their testing level, all their testing turned into like the world they used to test in became the Silent Cartographer, which, like you said, does kind of make sense because it's a big level. It's a
Yeah,
really long and drawn out level,
and it's got
and
all the elements
mhm,
there. The indoor stuff, the outdoor stuff. It's big enough for vehicles, but there's small enough areas to take on foot and different terrain.
mhm.
That
And
makes
yeah,
total sense.
I think we could go into you mentioned before, like we should talk about the different enemy types and the different types of like basically like characters. I mean, we've already kind of talked about the main characters and a lot of like the important one, Cortana, Master Chief,
Mhm.
Captain Keys, and there's not really that many other, like in terms of main characters, there's not really that many other main ones with the exception of Sergeant Johnson, who shows up in all the games.
That's where I
and
was gonna
and
go next.
and he has
Yeah.
a very specific tie-in to the enemies, which I'm assuming that's what you're going to talk about.
What you mean his specific tie-in?
the,
How
the
so?
the speech, do you know that?
Oh yeah, at the beginning.
No, 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 no. So, okay, so real quick, to how Sergeant Johnson ties in with the enemies here in terms of behind the scenes shenanigans. Um,
Oh, the elite voice.
yes, that's
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
was
yeah.
going with, the elite voice. So, one of the enemy types who's pretty much like Halo or Master Chief's equivalent in terms of what they are, but there's like thousands of them, are the elites. Elites are pretty much like there's different ranks within the covenant. You have the grunts as the lowest, then you have the jackals, then you have the elites, then you have the hunters. Though I'm pretty sure the hunters seem kind of just like dumb tanks. Like they don't really seem like they're like elites. I'm pretty sure can either be like a general type or a soldier, right?
There's different. Well, the cool thing is like there's different ranks within each species. So like the grunts are all just basically cannon fodder. They're like
Yeah,
4
they
feet
are.
tall, little, dumpy guys, like with the high pitched voice, like, oh my god, there's the Master Chief. And they basically do like what they're told. And another reason why I love this freaking game is the AI makes them all act uniquely individually, but also
Hmm.
like within a group and also within what's happening. So like the grunts are a little more scattered. They'll kind of come at you, or they'll stay in packs. And if you they're commanded by the elites, which are like the tall, pointy headed ones, and the blue ones are like the standard elite, and then there's red ones, which are like the commanding ones, and then even like there's
Purple
gold.
gets even higher.
Yeah, there's
There's
gold
purple
and
and
there's
gold.
silver and there's black eventually. Um, but the elites kind of control these little pods of grunts, and the jackals, which are like the shield looking bird face guys. Which a cool thing that I really like in the expanded lore that you find out later is that the jackals are mercenaries. So there's
Oh, I did not know that.
so they're like basically soldiers for hire. So they only care about money and shiny things, which is funny because like they're birds. So they just want that coin. So like in the books and stuff, there's like bands of humans that like hire jackals to like fight with them too, which is such a cool idea.
Oh, that's really interesting. I had no idea. That's cool.
Yeah. So
I had no
then
idea.
yeah. So the elites, the Sanghili, I can tell you all of their like alien names too. The elites control the little pods of jackals and grunts, and so if you kill an elite, the jackals and grunts will like scatter because they're
Mhm.
like, and you'll hear them saying like "leader dead, run away," and
The
like
grunts
they'll
the grunts dialogue are the best.
it's the absolute best. And they have the little like pods on their backs because they breathe gas. They breathe
Mhm.
methane, which is kind of funny because they're basically like, the lowest rung of the totem pole, and they're like breathing basically farts. Like that's what methane is.
I didn't even I didn't I had no idea that's what they breathe, and that's even funnier. I was even thinking about like methane. So
Yeah.
they're breathing, and then you finish the sentence for me before it could finish in
Yeah,
my
I'm
head.
pretty sure they did that on purpose. They knew what they were doing. But then so there's hunters too, which are actually uh
I would assume
colonies.
they're below elites in terms of like the ranks, but they're super powerful. I mean, I don't know if they are, but I would assume because they only show up in groups of two, and
Yeah, which
they
is
don't really seem to make decisions. Like they're not like they're always commanded to go somewhere. They're not the ones doing the commanding.
they almost use them as like
Like a
organic
tank.
tanks.
Yeah.
Like they don't um communicate with them directly, because technically the hunters are masses of these like not symbiotic, like these hive mind like worm colonies.
Really?
So when enough of them get into like a group, they kind of become, there's always two of them because they're called bond brothers. And in the lore, and I wish they explored this more in the games, but in the lore, when one of the bond brothers dies, the other one goes berserk because it feels like a disconnect to like the hive mind, because both of them, that's how they connect, is
Wow.
between the two. So they will go absolutely nuts. And there's really cool scenes in the books where like one will die and the other one will either go totally berserk, or to go on a slight tangent, but just to talk about how cool this is. There's in one of the books, the squad comes across this hunter that's basically dying of depression, and it just wants to die because its bond brother died a long time ago, and there was nothing around it for it to do or to fight it or to kill. And like when it dies, it's almost like there's this profound sense of relief that they feel in the air. So it's almost like they kind of communicate with pheromones, almost like you can feel what
Wow,
they
that's
feel.
so interesting.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And they die very unceremoniously in Halo 1.
Yeah, one shot to the
One
back with the
pistol shot to
pistol.
the back. For some reason,
Yeah.
we'll get into that as well when we could talk about the multiplayer. I mean, we've already been going for a little over an hour, but um, the pistol in this game is beyond overpowered. It's
Yeah, yeah,
not. It's not. It's insane how
yeah.
overpowered the pistol is.
But
And real
well,
quick, just because before we continue on, just to tie back with how we got on this with the elite speech. So
oh,
we
yeah,
were
yeah, yeah.
talking before how the grunts make all the oh my gosh, you elite are dead. The elites also speak, but it's usually in grunts, it's like "Roar, roar," or something like that. And all of their speech, or not all of it, but the vast majority of the speech that those elites make, the sounds they make, is actually Sergeant Johnson's dialogue slowed down about like 25% and played in reverse.
Yeah,
Almost all of it is. And I think that's really funny that they've
yeah,
used different things. And you can find clips of it like, sped up and sent and unreversed back to normal, and to hear what Johnson was actually saying. But yeah, Sergeant Johnson, one of the core characters of the series. Does he die in any games?
he dies in the third one.
Does he? Oh
Yeah,
wow, I
spoiler.
see. Once again, I barely remember that game. I don't understand the reference for it.
Oh,
Oh my gosh,
I love that one.
the multiplayer I'm sure is fantastic. It's just the story I just never. I've tried to replay that game 3 or 4 times, and after a while I'm just like I don't know I don't know what's happening anymore.
Yeah, it's because by then the franchise had gotten so large with like, by then they were like, yeah, there's comics and there's books and there's like short stories and there's podcasts and audio dramas, and it's just like, if you don't know everything, then it's still gonna seem like you're like,
But
I have no idea what's
even
going on.
so, it's not necessarily the lore that was confusing me. It was the way it was told. There was so much that was told through Cortana speaking in your ear midway through missions and not in
Very
between
cryptically.
missions. Yeah, cryptically. Not even that cryptically. It's when you give a lot of exposition, you have to do it when the player isn't doing a lot else. But it was always all the exposition was happening mid mission, somewhere during the course of the mission, not when I'm watching a cutscene, or not when like BioShock, when what they do in those is that they give you a tape recording that you have to actively press. So when you're actively pressing it, you're
Yeah,
finding a spot to stop and listen to it versus it just showing up on like just happening to you. But anyway, so yeah, so sorry, that was a bit of a tangent, but Sergeant
you're good.
Johnson, um one of the best characters in the game series. And I just find that funny. And so, but some of the other villains in the first game, you don't meet brutes in this first game. You don't meet brutes until the second game, which
Right.
that's a really cool plot point in the second game, from what I
Yeah.
remember. So, but what else? I cut you off before when I talked about Sergeant Johnson's speech thing. What was the other thing you were going to say, or did I
Well, I thought
trail
you
too
were
far off?
no, no, no. I thought you were referencing the speech that he gives in the beginning of the game when he's talking to the Marines, which, by the way, that whole his character entirely and almost all of the human stuff is directly, like, to a T, directly ripped off of Aliens, like the movie Aliens. If you've ever seen, there's like the gruff black drill sergeant type commander guy who's just like, "Come on, you want to live forever? Let's go!" And but he gives a speech in the beginning of the game that gets more more and more absurd the higher your difficulty is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah, it's
I
really
never
funny. So,
noticed
like,
that. Okay.
when you play on like easy or normal, he's saying I wish I knew them all by heart, but he basically says like, oh, these alien bastards, we're gonna kill them and take them back to where they came from. And then if you play on legendary, he says stuff like, we are gonna rip out their entrails and jump rope with them. Am I right, Marines?
That is a really fun little Easter egg for
Yeah,
players who replay the game on different difficulties. That's really cool. Actually, I had no
yeah.
idea. That's really
and
funny.
and he has a very funny and memorable moment at the very end of the game when you beat it on legendary. If Do you know what that is?
Uh, no.
Uh, well, should I jump to the end of the game and just?
The only other plot points really that, like, the major ones, is that after they discover the purpose, they discover the location of the Halo, of like the control center for for the Halo ring
Right.
from the Cartographer. That's the whole purpose they were going to. They was basically going to the map room of, almost like straight out of Indiana Jones with the city of Tanis, and trying to find that. But they go to
Mhm.
the map room to find where the actual headquarters are, or like the control center is. And on their way, do the Flood show up on their way to the control center? I forget. I know.
It's after. So part of why the reveal of the flood was so impactful is because when you get to the control room, Cortana is like there's so much, like, she's overwhelmed by the information. She's like, there's so much so fast, and that's when she figures out, oh my god, the Halo is a weapon. They're talking about something called the flood. We have to find the captain. Like, there's no time. Like, get out of here now. And Chief goes like running away, and because they lose the captain signal in this swampy area, so she stays there. So the next level is called 343 Guilty Spark, and that's when you first encounter the flood. And again, with this whole purpose thing, like, it's and intent, it leads you into this dark level, and you don't know what's going on, and you suddenly don't have that voice in your head that's telling you everything, and like, oh, we got to go here, and like putting a point on your map that's
Cortana
like,
leaves you as you go through the most horrific portion of the game.
right, yeah. So, and the fact that they didn't put any of this in the marketing, like, they didn't spoil any of this stuff, so you get to this very dark swampy area. The music is very like moody and sometimes not non-existent, and you're finding little pockets of Covenant, but like they're freaking out and they're running in all directions, and they'll be dead, and you'll see like shapes and stuff moving like on the horizon, and
Hmm.
you get to this compound or little area, and you hear gunshots and stuff blowing up, and when you get there, everybody's dead. There's dead humans, there's dead Covenant, and you go down that creepy elevator into this dark, like, I guess base, or it's a containment area, which you
Yeah.
find out later. But like, stuff just doesn't seem right. There's blinking lights like irregularly. Stuff is busted up. There's blood everywhere. And you get down to this door, and you hack it open, or no, it just opens on its own, and the soldier falls out, and you view his like um
His video,
his
like what
video
he
from
saw.
his,
Yeah.
yeah, all the Marines have like the Dragon Ball Z little screen over the eye.
It's over 9,000.
It's over 9,000 flood. And
Definitely.
yeah, for sure.
There's so many
and
of them.
and you watch this creepy like found footage horror film, basically, of that squad being killed by these disgusting monsters, and then you get locked in that room, And one of the things that I really like is when it shows them hacking the door open, and he's like, I don't know, this like door seems like it's really supposed to be shut, like whatever they want it, like, or what do they say, like whoever built this really wanted to lock it down for a reason. And Captain Keys is like, just get it open, soldier. And they do, and he's like, all right. And they do, and they get in, and all these parasitic things come out. And then you're locked in that room, and you realize like, okay, this wasn't that long ago. And then the doors bust open, and all the little creepy parasitic pod
Mm-hmm.
form, or what are they called, spores, are just coming at you like in waves, and you're like, what is this thing? And it suddenly changes the whole game,
It goes from an action game to a horror action game.
basically. And then
And
like,
it's a huge tonal shift, but it pulls it off super well.
yeah, I forgot to mention, like when you're going down to this area, there's goop dripping from the walls and ceilings and stuff, and you're like, what is going on? And you find that one Marine who's freaking out, and he's shooting at you, and he's like, stay back, you're not going to turn me into one of those things. And you're just like, what is going on here? But then the most iconic moment to me of that is you don't have Cortana anymore, so she can't really tell you like what you need to do, but your objective just updates to survive.
It's
And it's
so
just
good.
like, oh. So then you kill all the little things, and then the other doors bust in, and then you have something I noticed very recently, actually, was when you're coming down into that area, you pass a bunch of dead bodies, like I mentioned. Then the doors bust open, and the tall humanoid flood forms come in, and they're flailing wildly at you and just trying to like get at you. And you're basically playing a zombie survival game now. You get the shotgun, which is like the best weapon in the
The
game
best
besides the pistol,
best weapon against the flood by far.
for sure. And you're just like boom, 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 just like mowing through these guys. And I realized recently, last time I played it, which was probably like within this year, I think, because I played all of them again to get ready for Infinite. But I noticed this time when you come back up from that containment room, all the dead bodies that you pass are gone because
Uh,
they've been turned.
Yeah. Oh wow. And that's one mechanic that you had not really seen in other games. At least you know what, I shouldn't say that. I don't know for certain, but it was new to me at the time
Yeah.
of that when you kill a flood, if you kill like one of the humanoid floods, one of the little spores will crawl back into it and take over the body again. Like even if they're already been converted into a flood form of the human,
Yeah.
a new parasite will go in and take over the body again. And
Yeah. That's something I think that
it's
didn't
terrifying. It's terrifying to watch because the body starts convulsing and
contorting and
contorting.
but
The only way you can really kill it is by literally blowing it apart. And I re-
destroying.
and it's disgusting, especially in Halo 2 where the graphics got a little bit
I was
better
gonna
because
say
like
2 and 3, they're
because
extra
you could
gross.
if you shot a dude's arm off, you would literally see the tendrils of the flood like that took over its body,
Yeah,
just
just like
still wiggling a little bit, just like trying to get at you. It's horrifying.
yeah, and even in Halo 1, like, there was still some level of something doesn't seem right about these enemies because 'cause they're not just, like, damaged sponges. You have to shoot their arms off so that they can't attack you with their, like, whip things, and you can blow their heads off and stuff, and they'll fall over and just get right back up, and you can melee them too forever, and you will not kill them by meleeing. It takes, like, 100 hits
It's
because
terrifying.
they don't feel the pain because all they are is just the flood form inside this corrupted body, which is like bleh. And like the elite ones, like the tall ones, have just the dead elite head just hanging off, flopping off the side,
It's
like
the
so
attention to
gross.
detail and the designs are amazing.
Ugh,
Like for horror designs, it's so well done and it's so fucking terrifying. Like it's
I
still
know.
it doesn't make like it horrifies me to think about it in that much detail. When I'm playing through it, it's not that horrific, but like when you look at it in close detail, it's awful. Like it's just so terrifying to look at it. I remember it freaked me out so bad because just the idea of like a tendril crawling through my arm to take over my body, like, oh my god,
Yeah.
it's
So,
terrifying.
and you're down in this locked room with these things that you've never even seen and were not expecting, and suddenly it's a fight for your life while these things are chasing you. And I also like the progression of they start to learn how to use weapons through the course of this level. Because when you first
Hmm.
meet them, they're just jumping at you and slashing at your face. And then you go up this elevator where there's a bunch of dead Marines and not just,
Yep.
you know, Covenant and stuff, and then they're shooting their Marines weapons, like, but very awkwardly, like they're
Yeah.
kind of walking towards you and like they'll fire off a few shots. They're obviously not, like, you see the progression of them learning to use more weapons over time, which is just genius and terrifying.
It's just, once again, the design is real. Like, there was so much attention to detail put into it. But
Yeah,
you get out of that area and you realize that you have to destroy the ring. That's the, like, I think you
basically,
get
yeah.
you reconnect with Cortana, and she basically says, like, the only way we can do this without killing us all is just destroy the ring. Don't let them off this place. We
Right.
This is of the utmost importance. We can't let the Covenant use this because it'll kill us all, and we also can't let the flood off of this place.
Yeah.
And that pretty much is when you have to work your way back to the crashed Pillar of Autumn to set off its nuclear reactor, a fusion reactor, to blow up the entire ring. And the final the final level is I think one of the most effective. It's weird because it doesn't really use any of the shooting mechanics that the game is based off, but the
Yeah.
final level is just an escape sequence, and a really fun one at that.
Oh my god, yeah. Well, before, like, so the Warthog run is so iconic, and I love it to death. But like, from a design standpoint, like, you can see where they ran out of time as soon as you hit the flood, because from then on you do the library level, which is like everyone's least favorite level because it's super hard and there's just flood everywhere and it's room after room after room after room after room. You're following this little robot guy around who's named 343 Guilty Spark. And you got to get this thing called the index for him. And from that point, the game kind of goes in reverse, which is kind of a cool, like, symbolic, circle, halo. It's like, whatever. But really, in
Yeah.
reality, they were under such crunch that they were like, we have to figure out a way to pad this game out without, like, it would have been like 5 missions long if they didn't do the next couple levels, which was
Hmm.
basically, it was two betrayals, which is assault on the control room in reverse. And then there's keys, which is mostly uh truth and reconciliation in reverse. And then the final level, you're on the Pillar of Autumn again, but it's all destroyed because it's crashed, which is like Pillar of Autumn in reverse. So there's a cool, like, mirror to the game,
The
which I
levels feel
understand.
distinctive enough though that, like, you don't notice. I didn't even notice
Yeah.
that it was like a backtracking thing. I feel like it's pretty clear that it is, like, in terms of the how it's told in the story, but for some reason it just didn't, that never registered with me. But the levels feel different enough that that's a testament to their design then, man. Like,
Yeah.
the levels feel different enough that it doesn't feel like, you don't feel like you're treading the same ground again. It still feels new.
It doesn't feel like, oh, here's this level again, but it's nighttime. It's
Mhm.
like, even though that's exactly what it is, two betrayals, it's the whole assault on the control room in reverse. I mean, granted, it is nighttime, so it gives it a feel, but like, it's totally different this time because you're coming out and all hell has broken loose, and like the flood is fighting the Covenant, and then the monitor, the 343 Guilty Spark, has his sentinels, which are fighting the flood. These, like, floaty robot guys with lasers. So there's like
Mhm.
three factions just fighting, and you're coming out. And
Almost, and you find out later it's basically 4 factions because Guilty Spark betrays you. Um,
yeah, yeah,
because he's programmed by the Forerunners who created Halo, and he's just he wants to set off the ring
he's trying to
because
activate it.
he's
Yeah.
trying to activate it as well because that's what he was programmed to do.
Mhm.
And so you have to destroy him to stop that, and then you have to blow up the ring.
Yeah.
Um, what Now we finished up the story rabbit hole because you were talking about something at the end of it. Did you get to this point that you wanted to make already, or did I gloss over it?
Um, the point,
Or
what, the Sergeant Johnson point?
I guess I don't know. There was something you wanted to bring up, but since we hadn't gotten to that point of the story yet, I wanted to kind of finish telling the story real quick.
Yeah. So like the ship crashes, and again, like the testament to the choices that they made and how they cleverly reused assets and locations to keep it fresh is like, you're still going through the ship again, but it's all destroyed and there's like sparks shooting out of stuff. And um but you get to like the engine room of the ship, which that last level, the last half of the last level, called the maw, is one of my favorite experiences in video games, because you gotta fight your way through Covenant and Flood, who are all taking over your crash ship. You get to the armory, and they're just like, all right, load up. They give you every weapon in the game, all the human weapons anyway. Like you can go rocket launcher and shotgun. You can just get all the pistol ammo. They have all the grenades and stuff. Which again, like before we get to the end of the game, like just to quickly talk about the weapons, with like the purpose feel, the intent, every weapon feels so unique, and it feels like they all serve a purpose, and they all feel so iconic. Think of
Mm-hmm.
all the weapons that Halo made so instantly recognizable. Like even the assault rifle, that kind of wedge shape assault rifle with the counter of
Mm-hmm.
the ammo on the back, and the energy sword, and the needler, and the plasma pistol, like the charging the thing up and shooting the bolt
The
out.
noob combo as a result of that
Oh,
plasma
the noob
pistol
combo
to a
for sure.
pistols. Yeah.
Yeah. But every weapon, you still find yourself within that 30-second gameplay loop. It's never just like, all right, cool, I got the best weapons, I'm just going to fly through the whole game. Because even if you go the pistol, which is the best weapon in the game,
You'll
it's
run
not
out of ammo.
you'll run out of ammo, but it's also not the best for taking down the elite's energy shield. It's not the best for taking down the jackal's shield, because you got to shoot right in between where there's like the weak point. So all the plasma weapons that the aliens use are great against energy shields. So it's like, okay, so I use the plasma thing to take down the shield, then I switch to the human gun and finish them off.
Mm-hmm.
Like the
Mm-hmm.
needles that like all shoot out, and like the more that land in them, they combine into this huge pink explosion. And plasma grenades, like remember how cool it was sticking it
That is, I
first five.
think, there's two super satisfying things in the Halo games. One is a needler kill, where like you launch so many needles into an enemy, and since all the needles explode after a little bit, if you shoot enough into one enemy, then it's like a huge explosion that goes off.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second and arguably most satisfying thing is when you stick somebody, like
Yeah,
especially in multiplayer, man, where like
multiplayer.
you see a guy running and you just you lob a grenade and it just right on the side of the head. You're like, I got him, and you just see,
Yeah.
oh, it's so satisfying.
Is it a
Uh,
spider?
we'll talk about that for a little bit, because we've already been going for like an hour and a half. I know we
I know,
have
it's a
to
long
cut
one.
out a significant portion. Not significant. I know we have to cut out a portion though. But even so, we don't have a lot of time to focus on the multiplayer. But is there anything? But we should at least dedicate some time to it. So before we get to the multiplayer, and I know I'm kind of cutting you off here, but we got to get to the multiplayer, because that's the next. That's the other largest. That is just as big as a single player, even though we've
Right.
been spending an hour and a half on the single player.
I know.
What are some final thoughts on the Halo Combat Evolved single player?
Well, just to round out the whole campaign experience, like to finish up the story of the last level, you load up on all the weapons, and then Cortana's like, all right, we got to blow this place up. So then you have to you open the fusion coils, you throw a grenade in there, you fire a rocket, stuff starts blowing up, the place is falling apart, and you take this elevator up, and you call to your ship like, we need evac now, and they're like, okay, we're coming to get you. And then the Warthog run, that iconic end of the level, you're
Mm-hmm.
driving the Warthog down the length of this very long and strangely designed ship, but you're jumping over stuff in the Jeep, and like stuff's blowing up, and still there is a battle going on, and all the Flood are fighting the aliens, and the lasers and stuff everywhere, and there's a countdown timer, and it's like, you've got to get to where the ship is picking you up. And you get there, and the ship crashes, and your pilot Fohammer dies. And then Cortana's again like, all right, we got to get, there's another ship in the freaking bowels of the end of the Pillar of Autumn. So you just continue racing and racing, and eventually you get to the end, and the ship takes off, and
Yeah, you
Master Chief
survive
takes off
until
his helmet just off screen.
and you can't see it.
Yeah. Which, funnily enough, they like, if you hack into the game and like move the camera down, when it's like the Naruto thing when Kakashi takes his mask off. When Master Chief takes his helmet off, there's just another helmet there. It's not like he just lifts the head off. It's like he pulls the helmet off, and then he's still got the helmet on under it.
That's so funny. That's
But
kind of amazing.
I just to finalize the thing that I teased earlier, when you beat the game on Legendary, there's one little scene that you get, which is a bonus, which I guess is non-canon, but they didn't know at the time that there was even going to be sequels. But there's a scene where the ship is about to explode and destroy Halo, and it's Sergeant Johnson and an elite fighting over a an assault rifle, and he's like, "Come on, you mother, come here!" And it starts to blow up, and they both stop and look at the ship in the distance, like blowing up, and he just goes to the alien, to the elite. He goes, "This is it, baby. Hold me," and they hug. They just hug, and then the whole thing blows up, and it's so funny because, and obviously Johnson's iconic, so he's in the next one, and they don't really explain how he got there. They give you a brief explanation in the books, but it's still kind of like, what? So I think
Could be
that,
one of those things where just like, he was on one of the portions of the Halo ring that, because it blew up in chunks. So
yeah,
maybe it just drifted through space and he somehow magically landed somewhere.
yeah. I mean, one of the books kind of does go into stuff like that where they do end up picking up some survivors, but that final cutscene when you see the ring explode and that huge chunk like comes spinning towards the camera and towards the inside of the other part of the ring, and it just blasts through it and just rips it apart. That was so cool, and like as a kid just feeling so triumphant. But yeah, we can go into the multiplayer because that's just as iconic as the single player.
I mean, for us, both you and I are story guys. So as much as we love multiplayer, story is always going to be where our heart at. So that's why we spent so much time
Yeah.
on the single player. And also, I mean, we talked a little bit about the weapons, but we talked a lot about like the setting and the world building that the
Hmm.
multiplayer I mean, it doesn't take any from in terms of story, but it does take it obviously in terms of aesthetic. And the multiplayer was just so iconic. And you've referenced some of the game types before, but I think multiplayer, the thing about multiplayer is that you can describe the mechanics as much as you want, but a lot of times the multiplayer mechanics are just the same as the single player mechanics, just done in
Yeah.
a different context. So I figured we should at least reminisce about some of our favorite multiplayer moments.
Hmm.
I think I've told at least one before. I pretty sure I have at least one more that I haven't told yet. But I will say, probably, like I said before, probably the most satisfying thing in any multiplayer game. I don't care what game you're playing. The most satisfying feeling in an FPS is sticking someone with a sticky grenade, with a plasma
Yeah.
grenade. And especially if you're like running head first at them and you chuck it at their face and it lands like straight on their visor, so all the other player can see is just blue, and they're like, "Well, I'm done here. Fuck this."
You got to try to just take them out with you and
You
like
just
run
yeah, you
towards
have to
them.
charge right for them.
Yeah.
Um, so I'll tell the one story real quick that I've told before, just to give you time to think of a story,
Mm.
and
Got
then
so
I'll you what?
I've got so many.
Okay, we'll
I'll
uh,
narrow it
we'll
down to a few good ones though.
but I remember at my actually I have two that I'll start off with because they're both really quick. So first one, for my bachelor party, it wasn't Halo 1, but it ties into it. Um, actually, no, I'll save that story for the Halo 2 episode. But with Halo 1, I mentioned it on the Xbox episode how I first got it for my birthday. That's how I got the
Mhm.
Xbox, and Halo 1 was all tied with it. And for those who didn't listen to the Xbox episode, just a real quick recap. For my sweet 16, I wanted to bring a bunch of friends to midnight bowling, but that was kind of expensive. It could cost a lot of money to bring everyone to midnight bowling.
Mhm.
So I could either do that, or I could get an Xbox and throw a party at my house. So we went obviously with the Xbox and the party at the house. And I had this weird obsession with whenever I did a Halo party, and I ended up throwing a bunch of Halo parties. We played a lot of Halo 2, but I threw a bunch of Halo parties at my house. And I had to have a Halo 1 party first, though. I had to do it proper. I had to
Yep.
have a Halo 1 party, and then I could do a Halo 2 party. So my Sweet 16 was my Halo 1 party. I had friends come in, and I just set up the Xbox. I had people bring extra controllers, and we just played. It was just a 4-player LAN party. It was just all on the
Mhm.
one screen. Um, so we did that there, and that was a lot of fun. And I still remember, this is like so fucking cringy now, and it hurts me. And this isn't even about me. It was a friend of mine at the time who will remain nameless. Um, I have wasn't a cousin that I got to see often. It was a cousin who lived a couple states away, and I had recently become friends with her. So I invited her to the Sweet 16, and we were playing Halo. And I walked in and see how everyone was doing because I was trying to keep tabs on all the guests just to make sure I said hi to everyone and was socializing with everyone. And my friend goes, so my cousin is in the bathroom. She's using the bathroom, and then she just walks out the door. And my friend goes, "Hey, Josh, why don't you bring your cousin here for a round of strip Halo?" And
Oh,
he didn't know that she was there. And I look over at her, and she looks at me. I'm like, uh, I I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. And I told my friend, and he was embarrassed, but he also it was just it's cringy now because like it's not a good joke like at all. Uh, it's and it's a little creepy. It just
yeah,
it's a funny memory now. Like I shouldn't say it's a good memory. It's a funny memory,
yeah.
but it was so weird. It was such a weird thing. So
That's
yeah, and then the other memory I have real quick is when I did have one of those Halo parties. I remember the best thing about Halo 1 was setting your character name to default. Don't create a profile. Just let it be default because it had this game would randomized names for it. It was always stuff like the bear, the
Oh yeah,
big
yeah, yeah.
L, Stumpy. Stumpy was
Grunty.
great. My favorite though was Howard. It would just name you Howard. And so my brother, who's been on the podcast a bunch of times before, Mike, he was playing, and whoever, I don't know who it was, but someone was Howard, and they kept killing Mike over and over and over, and definitely not on purpose.
Yeah.
I think it was just just the luck of the draw. And by the like after like the sixth time he saw so and so, or Howard killed so and so, whatever my brother's name was, Howard killed Mike. I just, because I had it split up, there was like 8 people upstairs and 8 people downstairs, and we had wires connecting all the Xboxes and shit. So
Yeah.
from we were downstairs and we just hear from upstairs, Howard! Just him screaming in anger because this is like the 10th time Howard had killed him in a
Yeah.
row, and just hearing that disembodied voice, just pure anger, was the funniest thing to me.
That's amazing. My multiplayer technically, but we ended up doing this more. It was more fun to do this in the campaign, but it's still a multiplayer story. My favorite thing to do, and you can do this just in the regular deathmatch, but was like with all the crazy game types that you could make and with custom games and stuff too. And my second story is about a custom game. With all the stuff that you could do, we still managed to find the most fun in the dumbest things. If you drive two warthogs into each other, one person will just get launched. Like it'll just go flying off into the air. So we discovered this in multiplayer, and my friends and I would just like all get warthogs and just have this whole destruction derby and smash into each other. And the whole idea of the game type was you flip somebody out and then everybody tries to run him over, and that's how you get the kill. So eventually we called it warthog jousting, because eventually we started to play, if you played on this certain spot on the level Halo, you can drive a warthog, you can kind of like slowly work your way up one of the cliffs, and there's this long skinny stretch of cliff that's just surrounds like the kill area basically,
Yeah.
if you get launched far enough. And we would take the two warthogs up there and go to each end, and we called it warthog jousting. And you would drive the warthogs at each other, and one person would just get flipped like hundreds of feet into the air. Maybe not hundreds, that's an exaggeration, but you get flipped over, and like there's a weird something happens with the physics, like you collide and somebody just goes flying either backwards, and there's always only one person. So it was like trying to find the right angle to like you fishtail first and
Who
then
would
you
get
send
the
somebody flying.
priority? Who would end up winning on that one? Yeah.
Yeah, and so the idea was to try to either flip somebody out and then run them over, or like just get them to fly off of the cliff. And we would, that one you had to track yourself, because in multiplayer it was just whoever gets the most kills and then you win. In the single player one, and the cool thing was whenever you played co-op, if you died, you would respawn at your partner. So unless the warthog went off the cliff, in which case you'd have to reload the checkpoint, you could just keep going and going. So we would do like five, like first to like 5 kills wins. And I
So
remember
wait,
like
this
I
was
was
done in a co-op campaign mission, not even in a multiplayer map, right? Just in
yeah,
a
you could do it on either. In multiplayer, it was just like, yeah, if you need more than 2
but
people,
this was
but if
like
I
the
just had
perfect setting because it had that clip. That's so
yeah,
funny.
it was entirely surrounded by a cliff, so it was just super dangerous. And so we would do like, yeah, first to 5 kills wins. And so I remember I was on my very last life, and I I got flown off of a cliff. My I almost said truck. My Jeep Warthog flipped upside down and like kind of skidded along the edge of the cliff enough to flip me out of the Warthog, and I felt I it like kind of launched me away from the cliff. So as I'm like falling down, I like right before I die, I throw a plasma grenade like straight up, and it sticks to my friend's Warthog and it blows him up too. So we both died. So it ended up in a draw, and we were like, all right, we're just gonna end it up at that. So there's so many just like little ridiculous moments like that. But I referenced the custom games you could do. I think I found this online, or like one of my friends like came up with it. But basically, it was this mode called Deathstalk, and it was the edgiest thing ever. And basically, what you would do was you'd play on a small level. You would do all snipers. Everyone would have the active camo, so you'd be invisible, and you'd have the lowest health setting you can,
Okay.
and no radar, no grenades, just only snipers. So you're trying
Okay.
to like creep around and find other invisible people with snipers. And if you remember in that game, when you fire your gun when you're invisible, you show up for a
Yeah, you're
second.
visible for like a split second.
Yeah, and then it dims away again. So the craziest, like that was fun enough with like 4 people, because we'd play on the map was called Hang 'em High, which was that one with like all the like gravestone looking things.
Yeah, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And there's that 2-tiered tower on each side, and it's kind of like a square shape, so it's
Mhm.
relatively small. And we would do that with like 4 people, like, you know, just playing split screen, and it was very tense and a lot of fun. And they took a long time because it was like everyone's being stealthy and you're trying to find each other, and you're trying to find like this shimmer of a person, and then you try to pick them off. We played the only time I ever played a full 16 player LAN party, was at my friend's house, and we played Deathstalk. I like made a profile for it, and I like did all the rules, and I was like, all right, here's the game that we're gonna play. We had 16 people packed in that tiny little level. And so basically nobody wanted to fire first, because as soon as you fired at one person, like 15 other shots would go immediately and just like annihilate them. And it was the funniest thing ever. So it would be dead quiet for like 5 minutes straight, and then all of a sudden all hell would break loose for a couple seconds, and then there'd be like a ton of kills, and then it would be dead quiet again.
That's so funny. Oh my god.
It was amazing.
There was we created something similar, not similar, sorry. We created a custom game type as well, but it wasn't anything nearly as inventive as that. What
Mm.
we did was we would get we maxed it out at 14. We couldn't get a full group of 16 but at the one party, but we put 14 people on the smallest level, which is ironically called the longest. And
Oh
it's
yeah.
just 2 hallways. It's all it
Yeah.
is. We put on infinite grenades and nothing but rocket launchers.
Rockets.
And
Yep, I knew
so
it.
so you have 14 people crammed into a map that's literally designed for 4 to 6. Um, and
Yeah, it even tells you when you're picking the level, like recommended players, like
yeah, it
4
says
to
like
6.
it's designed. This is for 4 to 6, and we put 14 people. The game was chugging so hard. It was
Oh
frames
yeah.
were dropping like mad because the systems could just not keep up with how many explosions and particle effects were being
Yeah.
shot everywhere. And it was the most fun because there's just like you couldn't even people who are like the people who you know those friends who like get mad at multiplayer games because they're bad at every single one,
Yeah.
so then they just take it like I'm just bad at the game, so this game's like they don't even say that the game sucks, but they just become miserable and they're no fun to be around.
Yeah.
Even my friends who were like that loved this because everyone was on an even playing field.
Yep.
You were like, no matter what you did, you were getting destroyed. You could maybe,
Yeah.
if you were lucky, you had a 3 kill streak. If
All
you're
your kills were
lucky,
accidental.
Almost, and 9 times out of 10, you were killing yourself because an enemy
Yeah,
would come
yeah,
around the corner, you panic fire, and since it's all rocket launchers, you're just
yeah,
even if you fired straight on them, you're right in front of them, so it blows up on them, it blows up on you.
yeah.
So you
Did
would I remember at one point, I mean, I don't know if this happened or not, but I remember maybe not, this happened, but maybe not to this extreme, but there's one point that we had so many kills, but we weren't close to winning because every time you committed suicide, it docked you a kill.
Yep.
So there was at one point, like some people had like 10 kills, but they only
Negative.
had like 4 points because
Yeah, yeah,
they had killed themselves too many times.
yeah.
It, it was insane. Oh my God, it was so funny.
Did you also
And
do the thing? I don't know if this was just me, but did you also do the thing that every time, and I still do this to this day on any Halo that I play, every time a multiplayer match ends, you got to throw a grenade at your own feet and try to kill yourself before the screen fades out?
no, I've never done that.
Oh, I always
No,
do that.
I've never done that. I mean, I probably did, but I don't know. Um, I loved. Oh man, there's so many good multiplayer stories from that too. I Halo 1, it was just like it's so good. It's so good. The pistol's
Mhm.
overpowered. 3 headshots with the
Yeah,
pistol, even with full shields, they were done. Like
yeah.
you could take them out. So you would have like pistols only on like super large maps. So that way it would hopefully like Blood Gulch or something like that.
But it
Um,
also had a scope though, so for some reason, so you're just
like
like,
but it was still times 2. It wasn't like a sniper
oh,
rifle.
yeah, yeah. It was as
I w-
strong though.
I will say probably the last thing that's important to mention about multiplayer that's not personal stories is that it's the inspiration for Red vs. Blue, one of the most popular
Yeah.
internet series of all time, which I watched the first 2 seasons of it and really liked it, but I fell off of it. And I heard it's still is it still going?
It is still going, and I watched a couple of recent episodes just to see how far it's gone, and I hated it. I could not get into it.
Well, I feel like also now you're missing like tons and tons of like in jokes from
Yeah, but even,
previous.
like, I can tell when I'm just like, I didn't get that reference, and when it's just like, okay, this is just kind of it doesn't feel like it's written very well. I don't know. Like, what I loved about those first couple seasons was the writing was so funny and like like shock humor almost kind of, but like in a clever way. The
It wasn't
sergeant,
shock
like,
for just shock's sake. It was
yeah, yeah,
actual. It was more reserved shock humor. I do think it's interesting how Red vs. Blue literally launched Rooster Teeth as a brand, and
yeah.
then they ended up making Ruby, which is a super popular like
Yep.
anime style show.
Rest in
Um,
peace, Monty Ohm.
yeah, the creator did he only do 1 season before he passed away? Or-
I'm not sure. I actually like. I'm more upset about his passing because he did he was doing this series called Dead Fantasy, which was like dead or alive characters fighting Final Fantasy characters.
Oh wow, okay.
It is so sick. And he also did one called Haloid, which is like it's a spoiler alert, it's not Master Chief, but you think it is. It's a Spartan fighting Samus from Metroid, and it's
Oh, that's
super
kind of
cool.
cool. That's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
So I've actually
Um,
noticed a lot of people starting to like reanimate a lot of his old work from like the mid 2000s, which is really cool, like tribute to him. But yeah,
that's
it
awesome.
it launched a Rooster Teeth, which I don't know if it's because of this, but one of the iconic lines from the first season of Red versus Blue is "you backstabbing cockbite," and so Rooster Teeth is kind of like seems like it's an in joke to cockbite because it's
Or was that an in joke to Rooster Teeth?
I'm not sure.
Who
I don't know why
knows?
they would name it Rooster Teeth, like just out of nowhere.
I mean,
But
well, who knows? But
yeah, the two lines I always think of from that are both from the sergeant, where he's like, I forget the lead up line, but he says something like, tough and gruff man, and he goes, and somebody goes, sir, did you just spit inside your own helmet? Yes, yes, I did.
I
And then the
forgot.
other line, he's like, and you better, it's been so long since, again, I don't know the lead up line, but he's like, you better do something, 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 or else I'll have Simmons slit your throat in your sleep. And Simmons goes, oh, I'd do it too. And Sarge goes, I know you would. You're a good man. It just killed me.
Oh my god, I
But like
forgot about.
the reason that happened, that they even made that series, was because of a like not limitation, but like something, a quirk that they realized in Halo multiplayer, which was when you aim down super far, eventually your head kind of like pops back up again. So you
Mhm.
like keep aiming all the way down, and then your gun is pointing to the ground, but your head is facing forward, and then they would just move the head up and down like they were just looking up and down, and it looks like they're all just standing at like, at rest with
Yeah,
with
and
the
they're
gun down,
talking to
which
each
was
other.
super cool.
It was a really what it almost gave birth to machinima type of style
I
of thing.
think it did. I think it that's the first machinima that I ever heard of.
I actually remember there was a Halo 2 series called War Series or something like that. It was like a Halo 2 machinima. I'm gonna see if I can find it. It was just called War Series, which is like the worst thing to Google in the world because it's not like it's like bad. It's just fucking impossible to find.
Right. Would you like to search for every war series?
Yeah, right. And I don't remember what it was. It's gonna bother me. Maybe it was just called War. Maybe it was called it might have been Halo Alpha, which was like the company that made it. I don't remember
Hmm.
anymore. But I remember it used a lot of Halo 2 stuff, but it was just really well done. It was done in Halo 2. I'm gonna see if I can find it somehow.
Yeah.
It was so fucking cool. But anyway, we should really wrap this up because we're going at 2 hours and it is
Yeah.
almost 11 p.m. our time. But two final notes I had, and then I want to throw it over to you for your final notes, like your final thoughts on it. But just two final fun facts, I should say, before we get into our final notes. Actually, three fun facts. One, the PC version was different than the console version by
Yeah.
some minor things. You could get a flamethrower in the PC
Yep.
version. It only showed up in the PC version. And in fact, one Halo memory that I completely forgot to mention, I used to play. I had Halo for the Xbox, obviously, but Xbox when Halo 1 came out, Xbox Live wasn't a thing. So there was no online multiplayer component to the original
Hmm.
Halo, like there was in Halo 2 and every subsequent game. But on the PC, you could. Well, I didn't feel like buying Halo again when I already own it for the Xbox. But you could get Halo Trial, which was just all it was I don't even know what the single player component was, but you could play Capture the Flag. Well, you only had one game mode and one map. You could play Capture the Flag or Slayer or and only on like Blood Gulch. Those were the only options you had during
Huh.
for the trial version of Halo. And there was a whole community built around this trial version of Halo where there was clans. There was clans like you see now. And I remember
Oh,
I
wow.
created a thing called the Sky Clan. The whole way you could tell if someone was part of your clan was just you would put the name of the clan hyphen and then your gamer tag. So it
Right.
was not really any like, you know, content control. It was just Sky Clan. It was just be
Yeah.
Sky hyphen then my name,
Oh
and that
yeah.
was all there was to it. So like anyone could say you're part of your clan and vice versa.
Yep.
But and I actually had a couple people join my clan, but they, it was stupid. Nothing really came of it.
Yeah.
But the connectivity issues, like because it was just the free version, the connection issues were fucking awful. It was so hard to get any good games, and I got to
Yeah.
the point where you were considered cheap if you got into banshees because banshees were just like an automatic like noob thing that you would get to rack up kills and shit like that. But I got to the point where I had fight so many of those assholes that I got to the point where it's like because they would either try to run you over or like all this other stuff. And when you created games, you would type in like no banshee in the game title because
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
a way to like kind of mitigate it. Like the nice people would do it, but then the assholes would come in. So I would have people randomly join my game, and I vividly remember I had so many of them rage quit on me. I'm not saying I was like anywhere near professional or nothing like that. I just got really good in Halo Trial for some reason.
That's funny.
Where I would just keep the pistol and I would just fire at them, and I knew I got to the point where I could dodge their attacks because
Mm,
if they would try to run you over, so you would charge right back at them because they could only dive at a 45-degree angle, so you could
yep.
run right underneath them if you got really good at it. And so then you were behind them, and that was their weak point. So I remember there was a couple times where someone would come in, grab the Banshee, I would just take them out with the pistol, and they would try it a couple times, and then they just gave up, and they wouldn't type anything in, they wouldn't chat or anything like that. It was so much fun, and but the lag was still really bad. So I remember there was some times where I would have to lead by like 5 feet. Like I would see a dude running, and I would have to lead my
Yep.
sight like 5 feet in front of them, not like a foot in front of them. Like most times when you're leading a moving target, it was like 5 feet because the lag was so bad.
Yep.
And each match was different. You didn't know how bad the lag was going to be. Anyway, so
Yeah.
and
I
there was additional maps also on the multiplayer for the PC version.
Yes. I
Uh,
loved there was
I didn't
one.
play much though.
Oh, really? There's one called I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, but like Jephyrophobia, which was basically one of the huge bridges on the Assault on the Control Room in single player, but
Mhm.
like massive and just over like an empty chasm. And so that was cool, just like blowing, people off the edges and stuff, and getting, like you said, getting the Banshee. If you got the sniper rifle and got the Banshee and flew up to the top, you could just pick people off.
Oh, it was
But
great.
I was terrible at that. Like I got that game too as soon as it came out because I was like, I can play online with real people, and I was terrible at it until I ordered off of eBay this USB connector that I could plug an Xbox controller into the PC, and then I was just smoking guys left
Oh,
and right.
okay. Yeah. I know some people I see I've always been better with PC. Last couple things real quick cuz we are really going long. Um the armor, the Mjolnir armor Mark 5.
Hmm.
That was actually based off of the armor worn by the character in Marathon, which was called Mjolnir Mark 4.
Mark IV, yeah.
There's no relation between the series other than the name, but Master Chief wears Mark 5, the character in Marathon wears Mark 4. No other relation, is just a kind of a fun fact. And the last thing that I wanted to say was during their first European press tour for the game, the computer that was emulating the game, the computer that was running the game itself, literally blew up,
Oh, what?
literally exploded. It
Jeez.
started smoking real bad, and they couldn't show off the game. They just had to describe it.
Oh
It was
man. I
awful. It was absolutely awful.
I
So yeah,
remember Bill Gates having the blue screen when he was showing the Xbox off, but I didn't know that there was one blew up.
well, it was a computer. It wasn't even like an Xbox. They were showing it off for a
Mhm.
European press tour, and the computer that it was running on, because this must have been before it was on the console.
Yeah,
It just blew up, just straight up destroyed.
that's amazing.
So yeah, that is it for Halo Combat Evolved. We've gone on 2 hours of
Yeah.
memories and details of the game. But Andrew, what are your final words to close out this discussion of Halo Combat Evolved?
Well, as I'm sure you could tell, I could go for 2 more hours, but I will just say this is a game that stuck with me to this day. It is still Halo is one of my favorite franchises, and that is still my favorite entry in the franchise, even though like newer ones have, you know, tightened up things control wise, and there's more features and
Hmm.
all the stuff that like I do love. Like I love Halo 3, I love Reach, but Halo 1 will still just hold just such a special place in my heart. And I know I said this on the Xbox episode, but if you didn't hear it then, I'm going to say it. Or if you did hear it then, I'm going to say it again. This was the only game in my life that I played so much that sometimes you play a game for so long that when you go to sleep you dream in that like universe.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't go to sleep and dream that I was in the Halo universe or that I was doing Halo related things. I would just play Halo all day and then go to sleep and then dream that I was playing Halo. Like in the dreams, I had the heads up display, I had the grenades and the markers and everything, and I was just doing the exact like the physics in my dreams were just Halo's physics engine. It was
That
insane.
is fantastic.
Yeah.
That is
So
so funny.
where I'll leave it is just it's an incredibly special game to me, and it still holds up, and I love it very dearly, and I am incredibly excited to see all the ways that they've taken the inspiration from this game and its legacy and are going to put it into Halo Infinite in less than a month. A few weeks by the time this game comes out. So I am stoked for one.
That I wish I had an Xbox Series X otherwise for it, but I actually interviewed the composer for Infinite. Or
Nice.
yeah, it was before he was announced as I think I might have mentioned that the last time.
That's
Um,
awesome. Yeah, that's big shoes to fill because like Marty O'Donnell is a legend.
yeah, I mean, well, the dude who did it, Gareth Coker, who's doing Halo Infinite, he's one of a few on the game, and he also did Ori and the Blind Forest and Ori of the Will of the Wisps. So,
That's right.
like,
Yeah.
it's in good hands. Like, he's a
Mhm.
really good composer and a really really nice guy.
That's awesome.
Um, but anyway, uh, as for me, this game is super important for me just because it was the first FPS that I truly became addicted to, and
Same.
addicted is a strong term, but I
Not for
was
me.
hooked. It was hooked. I loved this game, and I still do. Halo 2 ended up. I know I'm going to have you back on, Andrew, and we're going to deal with some unpopular opinions. Then,
You know.
that's all I will say about that. But like Halo 1, it's just I don't throw around the term perfect game lightly, but I
Mhm.
really do think even if it's not something I enjoy playing that much anymore just because I've played it so much, it really is I feel like it's a perfect game. The controls still hold up. The art direction still holds up. The graphics, even on the original version, does not look awful. Like I'm not
Yeah.
saying it holds up compared to modern graphics, but aesthetically, it still looks good, even if it doesn't look as detailed and as polished as the games that are out, the Halos that are out now or modern games. The world that it built is still interesting and fantastic. The music is still amazing to listen to. There's
Mhm.
just so much about this game that I really feel it. Halo 2 gets a lot of the love, and Halo 2 and 3 are probably the most popular entries in the series to date. Maybe Reach. Reach is also super popular. But
I think people hold 2 as like the highest high regard though,
yeah,
which
I
may
think a
hold
lot of
feelings
that's
of that.
nostalgia. I'm a
Yeah.
Halo 2 fanboy, and I think a lot of that's nostalgia because going back and playing it, I still love it. But there is a lot of there's a lot of aim assist in that game. I've noticed like that game really is
Yeah.
generous to players. I'm not complaining about it, but it's very generous to players.
It
But
was
anyway,
sticky. It was much stickier because the aim assist was there in the
in
that's one
one,
thing
but
we
it
didn't.
wasn't quite as like
Yeah, they called it
intense.
like a soft aim assist because
Yeah.
you got to account for controller versus PC or for
Exactly.
mouse and keyboard.
Halo 2's aim assist was really intense. But
Yeah.
in any case, it's a perfect game. And I understand why it might not be for everyone, but if you're looking for like a sci-fi first person shooter, which is not like an obscure genre with a lot of extra declare clarifying or like declarative statements like oh it's a if you like first person shooters in the sci-fi genre about blue aliens with green faces like I'm not breaking it down to this hyper specific category. Sci-fi FPS, super common genre. It's arguably a perfect sci-fi FPS,
Yeah.
even if it's not your favorite. I think it's probably a perfect game. And that I think is a perfect place to end this episode. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining me for this 2-hour conversation into
I
the
know.
world of Halo. Where can you're part of the YouTube channel, The Experience Point, which we are also filming this for, which I always forget because I always have a tendency, like, I'm so used to podcasting where I don't have to smile all the time. And so I'll like stare off on the side. I'm like, this isn't good for video. So I apologize to your viewers.
You're good.
Um,
Yeah, he was just
but
scowling the whole time.
yeah, I'm just angry the whole time. For you listeners that don't see my face when I record, I'm just angry the whole time.
He definitely had a finger up his nose half the episode
Oh, the
too.
whole episode. You just he just didn't even see it. I was that sneaky about half of it. Anyway, uh, so you are part of the YouTube channel, The Experience Point. But where else? But where can everyone find you online?
You can find us all across the internet space at the Experience Point. It's THEEXP Point. And we are doing some cool stuff on Twitch. I'm trying to get back into it. If you watched our last episode where I had a cast on my hand that prevented me from playing video games, but now that is off. So I'm trying to get back into Twitch. So that is one place that we are trying to focus on right now. So if you could head over to twitch.tv/the experience point and just give us a follow, it's free. It lets the algorithms know that you like us. And we'll just be here being nerds with our nerdy stuff. And do you like this is for the viewers only. Do you like my Halo shirt, by the way?
It's unfortunately our video is a little blurry, so I can't see it.
Oh, the joke is that it's actually a Power Rangers shirt, and I was gonna be like, "What? The green guy with the power armor that fights aliens? This is Halo, right?" Anyway, yeah, we're on the YouTubes and the Instagrams and all the things at the Experience Point. So I appreciate you doing these little crossover things. It's always fun. And if you're here only on the YouTube, definitely go to all podcast places and follow the still loading. No, it's just still loading.
Yeah, at Still Loading Pod on everything. Yep, like I said, well, yeah, follow me on Still Loading Pod on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Email me stillloadingcontact@gmail.com. If you want to support the show, go to Patreon, patreon.com/stillloadingpod. Even just $1 a month will help grow the show. And for that dollar, you will get episodes a couple days early and access to a patron exclusive Discord. If you are so kind to give me $5 a month, you will get all of that, as well as I was going to do a monthly blog and a monthly bonus audio segment. I think I'm going to just change it up to 2 monthly audio segments because that's more fun for me, and I'm not the best writer. So there's going to be 2 bonus audio segments. They're not full episodes, but just thoughts that I can't fit into an episode, whether it's about a current episode, maybe it was a recent episode that I forgot to mention something in, or maybe it's just what I'm playing currently. In fact, at the time of this recording, I released the first one. It was about Mario versus Donkey Kong Mini Land Mayhem, which I definitely suggest you going to the Patreon and checking out. If you are unable to or don't want to support the show monetarily, totally get it. Just if you'd be so kind, you can give it a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts or whichever podcasting app you use. That helps more people find the show. And the most important shout out is the Bit by Bit Foundation. The Bit by Bit Foundation is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to put video games and video game consoles in the hands of kids receiving inpatient care at hospitals. So if you want to support them, go to bitbybitfoundation.org and consider donating. And that will do it. We have evolved our conversation on Halo here.
I see what you did there.
I see you like that, Andrew. So yeah, that will do it for this episode of Still Loading. Andrew, once again, thank you for joining me.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And I will see you all next time.